This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know this that I know. For the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, I know it, I know.
All right, everybody, we have a very special guest today, a man who needs no introduction. He goes by Boston and Boston alone. That's pretty much the only way I've ever known you.
That's pretty much how everyone knew me.
What is the root of that nickname? You're just from Boston?
So when I first came to town, the Stardust was the opening line, and they held a lottery because prior to the lottery, people would wait in line for like days, and someone was a little disappointed in someone trying to get back in line and pulled a gun out and said, "That's my spot, motherfucker." So
Sure.
they had to figure out a way to avoid gun shootings in the Stardust, and they came up with a lottery. So you'd give your initials and throw it in a hat, and they draw a position on a line. And obviously, drawing first was good. You'd have first crack at the line. So I said AD. That's my real initials, Dvorkis.
Yeah.
And they said, "Where do you have an AD?" I said, "What about Alan from Boston?" And so I was AB, and then I just became Boston. So
This is kind of perfect because I did want to work, usually you start with the whole backstory of like who you are, how you got here, everything else. But I kind of want to work from current day backwards a little bit.
yeah, let's go from misery to good.
Yeah. Well, just more so in the sense that, personally, I have a lot of interest in sports betting, but I don't do it at all. So I'm not that sharp on the market at all. And I think that, a lot of the poker viewership is like that too. There's a huge crossover, right? So I think if we kind of like dig into, your sports betting career as a whole, and then kind of like work backwards to how you actually worked your way into it and things like that, it'll be interesting for the
It'll be a very sine cosine thing.
Yeah.
I assure you.
So I guess like to start, you mentioned that they used to do a lottery at Stardust in order to basically place your picks. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, they had the opening line. They were opening a line cold. No one else on the planet had a line. There were no computers to look at what everyone else had.
Yeah.
So they had three guys who made lines, and they put up lines, and they were
and the
pretty bad.
Right. The advantage of basically going first is that you get a good line and then it moves.
I had first crack at it.
Right. Okay.
Which I never drew first. I was the unluckiest motherfucker in that too. But it didn't matter. I was betting everybody, so it really didn't matter. And sometimes people actually made mistakes and bet the wrong way. So you occasionally would pick off something like that. But I really did feel privileged to be a part of it. That was like the heyday of sports betting in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And then when the island started becoming more relevant, Vegas became nothing. Vegas still is a good place to bet sports.
Yeah.
It's just not the place like it once was.
Right. It's become more of a worldwide industry.
So, yeah, I came out here in 89 because I had to. Yeah. And I had met a friend. I used to come out for the World Series of Poker every year. I came out starting at 83. A friend in New York says, "You'll have a blast." And I wasn't a poker player.
Sure.
And I had two choices of playing stud or hold'em, so I chose stud, which was what 90% of the people played.
Yeah.
And I knew I was a sucker, especially when all the regulars were like following me around to get in the game. And it was at the Golden Nugget where stud was played. I think it was 30-60. And they had must moves. And I remember like one day I was like on the 13th must move for the 30-60. And they did it very pure. It was must move to must move to must move to must move. They did it real old school, which I think is actually the best way to do it. And I sat down and played, and it took me about 6 years, but then I got very good at it. And I'm not bragging, but I don't think there's many better. I played the 10K stud, and there was no one that, maybe John Hennigan, that was really in my league. And
okay, so that makes sense, like how you transitioned into poker. I kind of want to backtrack a little bit to.
But I am a sports bettor at heart.
Yeah, so this is like what I really want to dig into first.
Okay.
Because I know nothing. Right?
Okay.
So like I'm super interested in basically, broad strokes. What's the spectrum of your sports betting? Is it particular to college basketball? I know you're super big into that, or are you just like looking to get action down on literally anything because you're a good judge of lines?
I bet college basketball first, college football second, and tennis would be what I would do during the COVID thing.
Okay.
I'm a huge tennis fan. If I watch it enough, I think I could beat it. It's all logic to me. Back in the day, when I first came to Vegas, and I came out because I'd met someone at the World Series. He said, "Come on out, we'll make money." And all right, I don't know what he means, but That summer I created my own power ratings.
Okay.
And a power rating, let's equate it to like a golf handicap. I told him about the starters lottery. I had the lines for the first week. There were only 8 games. I said, here's what I made them. Do what you want with them. And I remember the first game we bet was Washington State +6 against Illinois. I had made it pick, and in fact the game closed pick. And I had the wrong methodology in arriving at my power ratings, but I killed it that year, and it was really obvious that I had a knack for doing this. And when I had that massive success in football, I just said, all right, well, fuck it. College basketball is much more relevant to me. I went to the Palestra every night. Right, I went to UPenn, people. Back in the day, college basketball was a very, very cerebral sport to handicap. It was kids playing a game for the love of the game and not because it was a $1 billion TV contract. And if you want to go backwards, okay, my game has simplified a lot. My approach has simplified a lot. So rule number 1 in sports betting is do not overreact. Unlike in poker, if you see someone play a hand like a moron, he's probably a moron.
Sure.
In sports betting, if a team loses by 50, they just had a bad day.
Yeah.
So if you're a golfer and you are a scratch golfer and you shoot 84, the next day you play, you're a scratch golfer.
Right.
You're not 12 strokes worse than you were.
Yeah.
Similarly, if a team loses by 50 as a 2-point favorite, it doesn't mean that they're any worse than they were. It's still those same players playing together as a team. And so that's my analogy is you have to avoid smoke screens. You have to remember this team is this good. That's my main starting point. How good has this team been with this coach over the years? So to go to Pittsburgh, when Duquesne hired Keith Dambro, who was fantastic, I expected them to improve. So if I had a power rating of Duquesne between 74 and 77 over the years, I would think with Dambro it would go to 79 to 82, something like that.
Sure.
And that's kind of the very simple way of me doing it.
Yeah.
Given the same coach and the same program, they tend to recruit the same players. They'll play within a certain golf handicap or within a certain power rating range.
Right. Okay.
And they won't deviate from that much, no matter what scores.
So essentially, you've basically made a livelihood off of being a professional handicapper.
I did well, yes.
Okay. Now, I guess
I didn't do it with my looks, I assure you.
So I guess explain to me a little bit more how this all shakes out mathematically. So,
Okay.
You're largely doing this, I don't want to say above board because it makes it sound shady, but you're doing it against the house who's charging a VIC.
Right.
Okay, so how big of an edge can somebody who's an expert handicapper like yourself possibly possess to overcome the rake and then some?
Yeah. So you shoot for 56%, which is about close to, I think it's around a 4% edge. I'm not a math guy. I just wing it. I'm a pure logic guy.
Okay.
And that's readily achievable. But remember, they have to put up a line in every game.
Right.
If I had to put up a line in every game, someone would beat me who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good my lines are. They would probably beat me. Because you have to put a line up in every game, but I can only bet the ones I want.
Right.
So you pick off the mistakes.
Okay.
Much like picking off mistakes when...
Sure.
That's kind of a good way to play poker.
And
wait for your opponent to make a mistake and attack it, right?
So that neutralizes a lot of the VIG that they're charging.
Well, hopefully if I know what I'm doing, I'll pick 56%. Over the last couple of years, I've actually killed it. Probably... I didn't keep track, but it was over 60% both the last 2 years. Yeah. And it's the first time I had any pride in what I'm doing. To me, I think I'm an abject failure, but even though there's probably, I'm king of college basketball, supposedly. But, I just copped out doing it. Anyway, but the last 2 years, I'm really proud. I had a couple bad years, and I realized that things had changed a little bit because it became a big business. Now, you're probably old enough to know when kids our age played a different sport in the fall, winter, and spring. Mm-hmm. Now they pick a sport and play it, right?
Right.
So where it became the love of the game, now it's a big business.
Yeah.
There's $1 billion TV contracts. These kids are all in every point, every game. There's no more letdowns. There's no more psychology and handicapping. It's just a pure numbers game now, which would not typically be my strength.
Yeah.
But realizing that and realizing home advantages have shrunk a little bit, I can't explain why. Probably because kids are more comfortable with travel and playing 365 days a year, you get more comfortable with everything. And all right, so someone's calling you a motherfucker in a crowd, big deal.
Right.
and they're getting better at. I used to think travel was probably the hardest part of it, but these kids are in such better shape now. Like basketball players didn't go to the gym when I was a kid.
Yeah, they're also getting like way better amenities. They're not staying at a Motel 6.
Right.
They're D1 athletes getting put up in the plush suites.
Yeah, plus the bonuses when they're recruited.
Yeah.
So the game's changed and actually simplified a lot. There's no more me looking for this is their home run game. This is a letdown. It's just taking that concept of the team's power rating, staying within that golf handicap. Mm-hmm. And my main approach to betting sports is how does the game play out?
Right.
The reason that happens, and unfortunately we have to go back to 1989 now, is when I first started handicapping, I had no computer.
Sure.
So
Common
what did I
for that
have?
time.
What?
Common for that time.
Yeah, there wasn't. I don't even think there was a computer out in '89 that
Right.
people had.
Yeah.
I did buy one, I think in '91 or '92, but even that, the internet was so limited. I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, what did I have? I had a sports ticker, so I went to the Stardust every night and I watched the sports ticker. They updated every game every 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. The games on TV they'd update more often, but there was only 1 or 2 games on TV.
Sure.
That's why ESPN's Monday night, Big East Monday night was such a home run. It was almost like the old Monday Night Football when that was the do-all, end-all. So I figured out that how the game plays out matters most.
Right.
That's all I had to work with. So, for instance, Duquesne plays, who's in that conference? George Washington. Mm-hmm. They win 82-80. The score at the half was 48-30 Duquesne. And they win 82-80 or whatever the hell it was. Now, take another game where UPenn is playing Yale, let's say, and the game is 40-all at the half, 55-all with 5 minutes to go, and ends 62-60 or 82-80. Mm-hmm. Same 2 points, different way of getting there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Duquesne had 20 at the half or 18 at the half is far more impressive than a game that was just pick 'em the whole way.
Right.
There's implications to be taken from that.
Yeah.
Duquesne is probably more than 2 points better.
Better than the score reflects. Right.
And that's it. That's
Okay.
it. That and a lot of just, I do a lot of reading on the computer. I read how because I have no sports ticker in my house, and now I read on the computer how the game plays out. Or you could just go and watch every second, every basket if you want to be a complete nut. But I have no algorithms. I have no computer. It's all in my head. I use 3-ring binders with lined paper and write everything down. I still do it the way I did it 32 years ago. Fuck.
Okay.
That's really
That's
depressing.
almost a me.
That's depressing. Yeah, that's almost
close
you.
to a me. Okay, so like
That's where I'm at now. I'm in Connecticut, and you can use. There's all kinds of encrypted apps you can use to tell people what I like, and and they just bet. I don't do any betting. It's 100% legal what I'm doing. I'm just telling people what I like.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
We figure out at the end of the year what I deserve.
Yeah. So
and then I pay taxes.
How much of your livelihood in sports betting has been like strictly business? Because from the outside point of view, I feel like this is like an outsider's view of poker too. There's a certain romanticism to sports betting, and I don't even necessarily mean that in necessarily a positive light, right? We have this idea of bookies breaking legs to collect debts, and
You're going way back.
Yeah, and guys paying off athletes to shave points or whatever the case may be. How much of that have you seen like throughout the course of your sports betting career?
None.
Yeah.
There was a rumor it's about 8-9 years ago that Troy State was dumping, and there was a lot of money bet against them a couple of games. But I kind of thought that when they told me they're dumping again, and it was senior night,
Yeah.
I told the guy I was working with, I said, "There's no fucking way they're dumping on senior night. Their parents are flying in from all over the world to see their kids play one last basketball game.
Yeah.
They are not dumping tonight.
Yeah.
That's just pure horseshit.
Yeah.
And the game went from like 1-6, and I unloaded on them, and of course they lost by 7 in overtime, and
Max Payne.
Yeah, Max Payne, of course, and so I was right, but I was wrong, and but yeah, that's it's too under the microscope now. They can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Even the 1980 BC scandal, the quote unquote scandal.
Yeah.
That was very amateurishly done. There's a book called called Fix, I think it's called, that talked about that. I actually hired a lawyer in Maine to help a friend get out of a mental institution, which I'm sure we'll get into because he was I taught him poker and then he taught me poker. And he was part of the defense on the BC basketball fixing scandal. And he knew me because I was in a book called The Odds
Right.
back in 2000. And I finally got to meet him this summer. I drove met him this summer. I had never met him, and it was just it was an amazing experience. If I do a podcast, I'll definitely interview him. It'll be a home run.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So there's no fixing. These kids want to win. And as far as bookies breaking legs, the bookies are the worst now. They don't pay.
Right.
Yeah. Back in the day, there was honor.
Yeah.
That's kind of gone by the wayside in the modern world, sadly. Like, honor is something you control, something you should be proud of, and something I've strived for because you can control it. So a lot of people don't like me, but you're not going to hear, Boston fuck me out of money or Boston took advantage of anything. You ain't going to hear that. And that I'm proud of. And that's really losing its way in the modern world, sadly.
Yeah, I get that. So I kind of want to dig in a little bit to your character.
So business,
Yeah.
I 100% bet.
Yeah.
I don't get paid for anything. I'll never be a tout.
Yeah.
Someone offered me $100,000 when I was dead broke. I was stealing food to eat not long ago, and someone offered me $100,000 to sell picks, and I told him I'd rather be homeless, and in fact I might be, and it was a true story. But I'll never sell out and do that. That's what scumbags do.
I guess elaborate on that a little bit. Like
So touts are people who can't win betting sports, so they set up these elaborate, manipulative approaches to getting people to buy their picks. Now, if they're so good at betting sports, they don't need to sell picks. They can just go bet in their own. You can bet all you want. If you're good, you accumulate money fast.
Yeah.
You can bet big. You'll get someone to back you if you're good. People are constantly looking to back sports bettors.
Sure.
Something I'm not very good at asking about, but yeah, if you have any talent at all, you don't need to be selling picks.
And the methodology to touting, where you just constantly have an influx of money, is you just sell opposite picks to half of your market, right?
I don't know if that's done much. I think they actually do try to win. They just don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
Some are better than others. Some are legit.
Yeah.
They're anomalies, though. Like I said, there's no point in being a tout.
Yeah.
I mean, I had years where I made a lot of money. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up in the hood, and I'm making, $500,000 a year betting basketball. Like,
Right.
fuck, man, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
For 5 months' work.
Yeah, and there's no amount you could sell that for that would equate to $500,000.
No, but even when broke, it's just a cop out. It's just a real sleazy, disgusting business because the person can't win. Right? They're paying me, and I'd charge a lot. If I had a tout service, I would charge a lot.
Sure.
But now they have to pay 11 to 10 on their bet. They have to pay me.
Right.
And then they have to get down at the price that I suggest. Now, if I'm any good at it, there's going to be a mad dash to that number.
Yeah.
It's a market, right? It's like the stock market.
Yeah.
If there's a good report, everyone's trying to buy that stock, the price flies.
Talk a little bit more about that, because this is something that fascinates me. How do high volume bettors like yourself get enough down whenever you find lines that are favorable?
So back when I did it with my partner from LA, I had 3 phones. We used to run around town betting. It was easy because it didn't matter then. There was no computers to show it was around.
Right.
When the Don Best screen came, relevant or sports options, whichever one you chose to use, it showed what every place had for lines. So, but there were a lot of places that weren't on that Don Best screen. So obviously you bet them first because it doesn't show on the screen, and then you just try to hit as many as you can on the screen at once. So he would take 2 or 3. I would take 2 or 3. And if I really wanted to bet a lot, I'd have a friend help me. But typically, we could just bang it out because there were places that took $5,000-$10,000 a game back then, and I'm not that rich.
Yeah.
And I was, don't get me wrong, I bet plenty, but
no, I think that's really
it was
important.
easy to get down. Now the market sucks. The market's very, very.
They cap it at a pretty low number now.
Yeah, there's one place now that's trying to save the industry. Circa. It's part of the reason I actually flew out here. I wanted to go talk to those guys. They're doing it right. I did a podcast on VSiN, and I suggested that a future book is, so this week at the PGA, you can bet Justin Thomas to win and take 11-1. The places in Vegas will probably offer like 8 or 7-1 on Justin Thomas, and 9 or 10-1 on Rory McIlroy, and 11-1 on DeChambeau, and 12-1 on Koepka. They're completely fucking you.
Yeah.
Because there's no.
Right.
Circa, when they heard me say the only future book is a yes-no, went with the yes-no future book. And in fact, I give them a shit ton of bets on. And if I had a lot of money out here, I would be betting no's. Let's say you bet 20 no's. You win 19 bets. There's only one winner. You're already 19 bets winner.
Yeah.
How good is that?
Yeah.
Right? So I think their future book will be a massive success, and I think their whole approach where they understand. All right, so let me take one step back. Here's why the market's gone bad. In the old days, there were bookmakers. There's an art to bookmaking. If Berkey goes and makes a bet, that's $1,000 on Duquesne -3. It's Berkey. I'm just going to leave it 3.
Sure.
If Boston comes up and bets Duquesne -3, all right, we'll move it to 4 or 4.5.
Yeah.
There's an art to knowing your customer, knowing what you should move the market to. Now they all look at the screen, and whatever's on the screen they put up.
Well, so
it doesn't matter what their balance sheet looks like.
Right.
It's
so
fucking retarded.
That's what I was under the impression of, that it was a reflection of where the
It
public
should be.
money was.
Public money has no influence on anything.
Really?
It's all smart money. Yeah.
Okay.
The
so
public has
basically where
no money.
Where the sharp money comes in, that's what alters lines
Yes.
one way or the other.
100%.
Okay.
And again, number one, I never told anyone what I liked unless it was a real close friend, and I thought it was a really special game. So my games weren't broadcasted all over the world. It was me, my partner, and that's it.
Yeah.
And occasionally, like I said, if I thought there was something that was really good, I would tell my buddy who did his own work. I didn't want to, get him off something he was doing. But if I like something a lot, it usually won. So
this sounds like vaguely familiar to like what we saw with the movie 21, where in order to beat the casino at blackjack, so much like anonymity had to be applied, where you're just trying to get action in long enough without them catching on and adjusting. I mean, it's a little bit different.
No, I know. I just despise those guys. They're a bunch of fucking
I get
they're a bunch
it,
of fucking rats. That's all.
I understand, but
there were people who did far more creative shit than they did.
Sure.
20, 30 years earlier. I heard stories that would just blow your mind about what these blackjack guys did.
Yeah.
Or cheaters.
Yeah, but I guess that's just the most famous example. But just
I guess I didn't see the movie, and nor would I.
Yeah. Just any collection of.
I was nice to Jeffrey Ma when I did his podcast, though. So
fair. I guess I'm just thinking, like, if you sent me in as opposed to you going in and placing the bet yourself,
in some ways, yeah. I try to hide what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. That's what Billy Walters did. That was his whole goal, was to try to hide what he was doing.
Right.
But he was betting millions.
Yeah.
I worked for him for years.
I saw a piece on him.
60 Minutes.
Maybe it was either
Only.
60. No, I feel like it was a documentary. I'll have to. I wish I was a little bit more prepared, because I think it was an ESPN documentary. It may have been.
He may have been mentioned, but he was on 60 Minutes. That's
okay.
He does not put his name out there.
Yeah.
And then he got fucked over by the government for the 90th time, and they created some case against him. But we're not going to go there.
Sure.
He's out. He's home and under house arrest. And has some medical issues. It's probably good that he's out. But he was my boss, and
yeah,
a lot of people don't like him, but we got along great. Yeah.
I guess for those at home who aren't familiar, like, what's he most famous?
Billy
or
Walters is the biggest
infamous
sports,
for?
probably the biggest sports bettor in the world.
Yeah.
He's certainly the most successful. He revolutionized how to get down on bets. Mm-hmm. He would send out all kinds of fakes.
Yeah.
To try to get people off his back. Because if let's say he lays 3 on a game and everyone knows it's a big bet, and the game goes to 6 or 6.5, the next time that team played that he bets on, the line maker is going to adjust.
Right.
And he's going to get screwed out of a half a point, or maybe even a point, which is just a shit ton.
Yep.
A half a point is the world.
Right.
In basketball. Mm-hmm. Worth way more than I think people realize, which is why I like to buy half points. Computers kind of say otherwise, but anyway, again, not going to get into that. But he was so successful that everyone wanted to know what he was doing.
Okay.
So how do you counter that? Well, I remember calling him one day. I said, well, how's today going? He said, well, Red, I just bet every game on the board. Some real, some not. And that's it.
Yeah.
Go figure out which ones are the real ones and which ones aren't. And,
right.
And so he found, I told him this story the other night, and he just laughed his ass off. I said, there was an NCAA tournament. I walk into the Palms like 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm trying to be anonymous.
Yeah,
Right? 1 o'clock in the morning at the Palms seems like a good time to go. And there's this couple. The guy's got a nice suit and tie on, holding his wife in his hand. He's got a little list in his hands. And his first bet out of the box is Holy Cross plus 26. They're playing Kansas. And I love that side. And I said, you know what? I immediately knew it was you. And now I want to listen in and see what he's doing, because Mr. Walter's stuff was really good.
Yeah.
I'm good, but his stuff was really good.
Yeah.
And he just laughed his ass off, because for sure it was one of his people.
Right. Right.
And they might have even given him extra because he might have been a customer of a big baccarat player. He tried to recruit them, and he did anything he could to try to get bets down.
Yeah. So it's just like any other gambling market. VIPs kind of rule the world, and everybody else is just kind of at their beck and call.
but they wouldn't take 2 cents from Mr. Walters if they knew it was his.
Right. Well,
Even though you should.
He's the sharp. The people he's hiring to
Right.
place are the VIPs.
Right.
Yeah, it's very similar in the poker sense, right? It's like the elite players, they're going to struggle to get into games, but if they can offer up a VIP, suddenly a game forms, and
Gotcha.
It's we're all exchanging EV.
I would know about that.
Right? We're all just exchanging EV at the end of the day. Okay, so my last question was sports betting, and then I kind of want to dig in a little bit to just your character, your past, and how you got to this point. What type of volume does a sports bettor need to be putting in order to have like a sustainable livelihood?
A lot more than
Like
you
7 figures worth of bets a year, more or less?
Yeah, well, I mean, figure it out. I mean, if you have a 3% edge and you bet X number of dollars, that's what you figure to win.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're talking
we used to bet millions and millions.
Right.
But I actually wasn't even as good back then as I am now. It's really I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
The last 2 years I'll tell you what part of the reason it happened is I was basically laying dead in Connecticut playing 20-40 stud. That's why I moved to Connecticut, because they had stud there, and I'm a stud player at heart. And a friend calls me and said, would you be interested in betting football and basketball? Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this guy had met me in Vegas 30 years ago. He's in Costa Rica. And I call him up, and we talked for a while. He called his friend, who, do you know Alan Boston? He said, no, but I know someone that does, who called this guy, and now he called me, and now I call the original guy. And I said, listen, I'll do college football for next to nothing because I'm not that good at it.
Yeah.
But when college basketball comes, we're gonna have to talk again. But this guy was very fair, and we worked out something I thought was kind of amenable. It was probably too low for what I'm worth.
Sure.
But when you're sitting there, stealing food to eat, and you want to feed your Great Dane, you take a little, the worst of it.
Yeah.
Which still wasn't worse of it. I still could have made a couple $100,000. I mean, it wasn't like I was, destitute.
Yeah.
And he would give me money every month to live on to make sure I didn't have to worry, which is smart.
Right.
But the guy followed me on Twitter, and that's how I used to occasionally tweet games. And I remember one day on Twitter, we had gotten down the night before on everything, and I was and finished it off in the morning, and it's like 6 a.m, and I just tweet like 9 games, and I said, "Here's what I like, people, for better or for worse." And I very rarely tweet, but this felt like a good day, and I was having a pretty good run, and one by one. So I remember I liked West Virginia +4 against Texas Tech. So we're in conference, so it's probably January or February. And now the game goes to 5.5. Like, that doesn't happen too often with me. I'm usually, they call it closing line value.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a believer that I don't want closing line value, but we'll get to that in a second. And this will resonate with you as a poker player.
Sure.
Everyone wants CLV, they call it, closing line value. Because if you lay 3 and it closes 5, you have a good bet. In theory.
Yeah.
The market says the line should be 5. You laid 3 and 11 to 10. You've made a very good bet.
Yep.
Mr. Boston doesn't necessarily think that's what you want. But so I take 4, and now the game's 5.5. Like, what the fuck's going on? And one by one, every game I tweeted that day went the other way. And now I talked to my new boss. I said, so there was a day that I happened to go like 8 or 9-0, but every game went against me to start. And he just laughed. He said, yeah, that was me. I said, I thought so. I said, we'll get along just fine.
Yeah.
And we do. We still talk.
Yeah.
Once I had money on my own, I'd rather bet my own money than have someone back me.
Of course.
Even if it's for less. It just feels right.
Yeah.
It's nice to win money for other people. But what Roger found, let's call him Roger, he found this group called 3-Man Weave. And they had previews that were extraordinary. They had a modern approach, which I don't have at all. In other words, looking up, what's that site everyone looks at for stats? I forget. Anyway, synergy and all these things that show all these percentages, which, by the way, mean nothing because they're all statistically irrelevant. But people think they're the do-all, end-all. Anyway, but they wrote it with like an old school flair. So I was like really intrigued. And I read their previews. I said, these guys are phenomenal. They really know their shit. So the weakness in my game is I take a very general view to what the team's golf handicap or power rating should be. I know it's going to be kind of between this range. But when they lose 4 starters off a team, I always felt the point guard was the most important. If they kept the point guard, I wouldn't deviate too much. But what about the guys that are coming in now? These kids knew how good the players were.
Yep.
So the first year we didn't really get into it much, but the second year in particular, I said, listen, we're going to go over every team. I'm going to tell you what this team typically plays to. You're going to tell me how good the players are. And we're going to come up with a starting rating. And all of a sudden, so let's say you start 0.5% better on your rating. Multiply that out by 30 games on 350 teams. Mm-hmm. And you've just hit a fucking home run, right?
Yep.
And that's what happened last year. We won in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I was done with my guy because he won so much money. He got stiff for some obnoxious amount of money. He couldn't bet till like late in the day. And I tried it for a couple of days. I said, sorry, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It's not fair to me. I'm still doing all the work, but now I'm not getting down on anything.
Yeah, right.
So I went and did it on my own with a friend and went from there. But where was I going with this? Anyway, so what happened the last 2 years was I had better starting prices because I was willing to listen to kids that know their shit.
Yeah.
And, right, you always want to get better. You got to throw your ego out the window.
Yeah.
And I had never done that before. I'm entirely self-taught and everything. I never read one thing about poker. I never read one thing about sports betting. I just want to figure it out on my own. Yeah. I don't want to. If you're learning from someone else, you're probably always second best.
Sure.
So why not try to figure out something on your own? Mm-hmm. And in poker, I certainly did that. I certainly play stud way different than everybody. And the people I've taught are like, wow, that's really cool. And yeah, and I'm right.
Yeah.
And in No Limit Hold'em, I think what I was doing 10 years ago is starting to really get a little more in vogue now. But again, this is a kid who became bipolar and just went nuts. But bipolar kids going nuts, sometimes their brains expand. If anyone watched Homeland, she went off her meds to try to solve a case because her mind would expand. And this kid went from a very average intelligence to a genius and just completely flipped around the wheel. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of cool, coming up with some creative approach to poker. I thought that would resonate with you.
Yeah, I mean,
so back and one final point why I don't think CLV is good. If you're doing what everyone else is doing, it's not sustainable.
Right.
If I take 3 and the game goes to 5 and I win, I'm going to be rich the rest of my life because I'm doing something that they're not and I'm doing it better.
Sure.
So I'm not a big CLV guy. I'd rather have everything go against me. I've won almost every year, so I've lost 1 year, I think.
Yeah.
So I feel like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And when I did that, Jeffrey Ma and Rufus Peabody was a very famous sports bettor. I mean, Jeffrey Ma went to MIT and Rufus went to Yale. You know, I went to Penn, but they're in a different league.
Right.
And at the end of the show, they're talking about like how my mind like does what a computer does. Like, and they were like saying when you're dealing with really smart people like Alan, like that was it. That's the first time I felt any pride in what I've been doing. Because to me, I'm a complete cop-out. Like, I'm just playing it totally safe. That's the irony. I got all my money out there, but it's playing it safe for me because it's something I'm very comfortable with.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, what you describe or the way you describe your approach, it's very much a lot of what we saw in the evolution of poker, too, where there's the old school field player versus the new school game theory optimal player. And the truth of the matter is that both are absolutely necessary. Even if you look at the algorithms that are created to kind of solve a complex game like poker, it lacks a lot of nuance.
Right.
And both the field player and the algorithmic approach start from a broad scope spectrum, and then they continually hone in on the nuance as the parameters become more and more precise.
Okay.
So like a lot of what you're describing with what you're able to do in handicapping is similar to like my outlook on poker. If you take a 10,000 foot approach and you have like fairly reasonable certainty on, the I guess broad strokes of what it is that you are identifying, be it a spot in poker or be it a matchup in a basketball situation, right? Like you can just look at the broad strokes and say like, okay, I rank this team slightly higher based on this, and this, right? These are broad stroke facts. Somebody who's good with the algorithmic approach can then drill into that, right? And really hone in on why you're right. And I think like marrying those two things together is a lot of what you're experiencing now. It's being able to put a rhyme to your reason, a method to your madness, you know?
So just to go one step further. All I do is just pure logic. When I play poker, it's pure logic. And rather than what they might have, I figure out what they don't have.
Sure.
Like this is what the kid taught me. The kid 3-bet almost his entire range, and people talk about balance. Well, if you 3-bet everything, you're balanced, right?
Not
not totally.
Of, sure.
Well, how are you not?
Balance is misunderstood. So the real definition of balance is that you have a distribution of hands.
Right. I understand.
Yeah, but it's over the aggregate, right? So like me having equal parts 3-deuce offsuit and aces doesn't equate to balance, right? Because having 16 combos or even 6 combos of 3-deuce dilutes my equity more than having like 2 combos of 3-deuce and 6 combos of aces. So like true balance is finding the equity threshold necessary for the spot and then adding in as many hands necessary to kind of like hit that point.
But I think if you 3-bet your entire range, it's the same, right? Given that you're gonna, if you're willing to play all these hands, and the kid played a wide range,
probably worked.
The kid played a wide range of hands.
Yeah, it probably worked back then because the counter response was fallible.
Right.
So if he's playing against a computer, he'll get destroyed because the computer will respond through a proper 4-bet frequency, a proper calling frequency, a proper folding frequency. But if you're against humans who implement very poorly and they like never 4-bet, now you get to realize all of that equity of all those hands. And,
that was the idea back then, especially playing really deep.
Right.
Where you make a small 3-bet and you learn the whole world.
Yeah. And
that was his idea. I mean,
effectively,
I'm sure he would have evolved over the years if he wasn't dead now.
Hey, 10 years ago, and even today, aggression wins, right? So it's like at the end of the day, that small price that he's paying in order to gain initiative is worth a whole lot against players who are playing poorly.
Right, and even good players had a hard time with him.
Yeah,
he looked to check raise more than c-bet, where c-betting was like the do-all end-all. Right, and we also made real small bets because it was just. So I won't get into poker too much because I really don't know much about it. But my whole approach to no limit, and again, this is what I taught myself, and I wanted to play deep because it's much more cerebral playing deep than just try to get it in. Like
for sure.
So I started off with the thesis of, well, if we're playing super deep, we can't get stacked, but we still have to be able to stack them.
Yep.
That was my thesis. So what do we do with that? I'm a limit poker player. Let's try to make small raises, small 3-bets, small continuation bets, even small check raises. Try to define their hand, and then figure out, but when we define a hand, if we're going to be able to bluff them or not.
Yeah.
Or whether we just have the best hand or not.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of the 10,000-foot approach where, everything you're saying has some merit. And if you drill down into the actual game theory of what you're saying, we can actually really formulate a well-developed why. But, when the game's soft, you don't need that why.
Right, that's my battle.
And that's the big difference, right? Like, and I'm saying, like,
I can't help myself.
Yeah, I think now that's probably what you're experiencing in sports betting is that as you've matured and you've brought in that outside help that's really focusing on the why by drilling down into the metrics, you are getting much more proficient at your own craft because it's giving you better direction, right? It's cutting out the white noise of your own mind.
I started off better the last 2 years because I had these kids previews to read the first year and to talk to them personally the second year.
Right.
And that made the world of difference.
Yeah.
And I had more faith in what I was doing. When you win, if you don't have faith in what you're doing, you're fucked.
Right.
And where I often have a subconscious drive to make a bet where I've made the game 3 and the line is 3, but I know 3 is wrong.
Yeah.
And now if you're losing, you have to trust something you can't even verbalize.
Exactly.
Right? And now you're just screwed.
Yeah.
But when you're winning, fuck it, let's lay 3. My gut's telling me to lay 3. Maybe I can figure out why, what my gut's telling me.
Yeah.
Because your gut is just some memory you saw from before.
Yeah. It's subconscious, for sure.
Yeah. It mirrors something you saw in the past. Like this game won at some other point in my life. It might even be from 1990.
Yeah.
That's
what's really hard for the theory-based community in any sort of math-based element, be it sports betting, gambling, poker, whatever, is that there's this unconscious learning that we can't quantify. But we as humans are really good at acting upon it.
Correct.
Right? And it's like...
Or not so good.
Yeah, or not so good.
Yeah.
I truly think that we're really great stereotyping machines. Right? We're very good at sizing up our environment and knowing what's a threat.
And destroying it.
That too. But also just like knowing how to exploit it. destroy it or make it better, we still know how to exploit it.
Yeah, great.
Right. And I think that that's like kind of, that speaks to gut feeling, that speaks to intuition, that's really just an unconscious.
It's the
level.
highest level.
Yeah.
It's the highest level of thinking.
Yeah.
And if you're just a pure math guy and don't have any gut at all, or don't have any sense of table dynamic, right? And I think the other problem a math guy would have, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if I'm sitting there 3-betting you every hand, you have to play me different than someone who 3-bets only the nuts, right? I mean,
yeah.
And they have that in their thing or something.
It should be logicked out. You should know like what the boundaries are versus a sane opponent.
So it's not like this is absolutely the right way to do it.
No,
they have a range of
the quote unquote absolute is based on the parameters entered, and your parameters are obviously set differently if you're 3-betting me with every hand. Right, which I probably would change as soon as I 4-betting me, but that's beside the point. Exactly.
Again, it's a constantly ebb and flow.
I agree.
So
with
why I know math might be good to know, but I don't know how they win.
It's to create that concrete spine that you're always moving left or right of.
So it's just your foundation.
Yes.
You can get creative from there.
Absolutely.
And the GTO guys do that?
No, not enough. But
that's what I thought.
But the best of the best do.
Okay.
Right. So like the overall or the overarching narrative may be stick rigid to game theory, but the best of the best understand that game theory is a study, and the actual implication or implementation rather is the creativity that blossoms off of that. Right. There's no lines to color within. There's just this foundation born off of theory that we study in a vacuum. And when we move outside of that vacuum into a real world scenario, now it's on us to enter the parameters.
Right.
And we have to be good enough to move left or right of that foundation to say like, well, this is going to make more money in this particular instance.
The only thing I've ever said on a 2+2 poker podcast, which I've done several times, besides giving some stud hands that were pretty cool, was I thought people got too wrapped up in trying to learn from others. The computers got better, right? I'm sure the computers tell you different now than what they did 10 years ago.
100%.
Right? They've evolved too.
Chess is a perfect example of this.
Yeah,
Stockfish
exactly.
1 compared to Stockfish 12, it's not even close. Like it will destroy one another.
So I told the 2+2 audience, I said, be willing to get out there and do something on your own. If you come up with some creative way to bluff a hand, try it. If it doesn't work, you just lost a little bit of money, but at least you're trying to do something different. Because like I said before, if you're just copying someone else, you're fucking second best, man. And why do you ever want to be second best?
Well, that's kind of the beauty of these solvers now is that we can try stuff and then test it. So we can test under what parameters it actually is profitable to make this play. So it's cool to get
but
positive.
it's still player dependent, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what sets the parameters.
Okay.
Right? So like
I got you. I understand.
We can
this
try
is really foreign to me. I'm just a free thinking.
Effectively, just think of
human.
it as the simplest version is think of it as a calculator.
No, I got it. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
And we're just plugging digits into a screen.
You would put different parameters in for a good player versus a bad player.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know my buddy does that. Right.
Yeah, it's really fascinating in that regard because it does give us some sort of feedback. The trap, I guess, is whenever you just buy into it as Bible.
That's always the trap. Right. That's what I was trying to advise
People are
against.
desperate for answers instead of
there's
better questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I knew we'd get along.
Not a great segue, but I do want to dig into more of you as a person because I find you fascinating. First of all,
well, thank you.
But
you were fun to play with too.
But secondly, I was terrified of you when I first met you. So I kind of want to like.
I'm 5'8", 185 pounds. I'm hardly terrifying.
Yeah, but like you're also like what 10 years my senior, give or take.
More.
Okay.
You're not in your 50s, are you?
No. I'm
62 this month, man.
You're 62?
Yeah.
Wow. You don't look it. I would have given you 54.
I'll tell you what, I got carded at 50, but when you go through when you go from being a millionaire to being broke, you age very quickly.
That's fair.
So I've gotten older. That's
I can understand.
Sure.
But yeah, no, you have like this certain intimidating presence, and you kind of spoke about this on the onset. You said you consider yourself an abject failure, and that there are a lot of people that don't like you. And it's weird because I find you quite likable, but I can completely understand like how that misconception occurs. Because at first, I was like, you were the guy at the table I didn't want to piss off. I didn't want to look at cross-eyed. Like, I just thought...
I have crazy eyes.
I just thought you were an angry dude. Like, I thought you were an angry dude. I thought you were a D-gen who's in the sports book all the time, coming off firing a poker, and, like, you lost a hand. You were very East Coast, which I appreciate.
All right.
So
but I'll say this. I think one day you told me that I kind of paved the way for a lot, which, like, wow, how the fuck does he know that? Like...
Yeah.
So before the odds came out, That was the book I was in.
Yeah.
Gamblers were thought of, and if anyone's ever seen the movie California Split, and you must see it if you haven't seen it, it's the greatest gambling movie of all time. It's not even close. Like, there's nothing even in this league. I was supposed to host California Split night when the circuit opened, but the COVID thing's kind of like ruining it.
Yeah, of course.
So next year I'm going to host a California Split night there, and I'll encourage all to come. It's an amazing movie, and I met the writer, talked to him for an hour. It's an unbelievable movie about gambling. Pre-odds, gamblers were overweight, whiskey chugging, cigar chomping guys who held out smoke-filled rooms all night, went to the racetrack during the day.
Yeah.
Now the odds comes out. I'm an Ivy League grad who goes to the gym every day and is wildly successful.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of what a gambler is changed with the odds.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most of the good poker players are smart.
Yeah,
Maybe,
for sure. We've seen a huge shift in the community in the last 15, 20 years, I would say. Where it used to be Cheetos and weed, and now it's more like grass juice and
right. And I was again, I'm not a braggart. It's just a fact. I was kind of like the first guy that knew the gym.
No,
was
you were
important.
definitely an intimidating.
Oh, I was an animal.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a personal trainer for 25 years and
you
beat
were
the living crap out of me every day.
great shape.
Yeah, never ate a wrong thing. I used to always lift my shirt up and wipe my yeah. Not anymore, but
I mean, you're 62. You get a break.
I also stopped going to the gym. I also felt sorry for myself when the shit hit the fan and
so I guess let's dig
5
into
years
that
of
a little
misery.
bit because you
all right, so I come out here and you want to go backwards or forwards?
I want to go backwards because you're telling me that you consider yourself an abject failure, and I don't see that at all. Like, you're successful at what you do. You've been doing this for a very long time. I assume it was a choice. You know, you're an Ivy League grad. You could have done whatever you wanted.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
That's just it. I didn't know that. I was really naive. Mm-hmm. So I became a gambler, and we're gonna have to go forward, and then we'll go backwards.
That's fine.
Yeah. So this will be a little painful, but we'll do it. So I want to be a baseball player, which is
Me too.
Yeah, I know.
Still do.
And had crazy talent for it. But at 13, my parents split.
Okay.
And also at 13, unfortunately, having an IAQ can cause problems. I understood that we're mortal. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be thinking about that when you should be thinking about girls.
Right.
You shouldn't be thinking about the fact that this might all be just a complete shit show and useless and irrelevant.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I did. Mm-hmm. And that coupled with my parents' breakup, I was a fucking mess. I mean, I had to hide tears nonstop. I went to high school. It seemed like just a bunch of bullshit to me. They were mostly stupid people doing mostly stupid things. I did have some really good teachers, don't get me wrong. But I just didn't want any part of anyone near me.
Yeah.
Get away.
Yeah.
So I really was able to wall everyone off. I mean, you know, I'd go out on a date once in a while. You just almost had to, but I was very good at suppressing everything. Now what? My dad went to the racetrack. He took me to the harness races. I fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. Now here's a place I can go to challenge my mind and maybe make a few bucks. Yeah. And I loved it. And it occupied time. When I went to Penn, when I went to the Palestra to watch a basketball game, basketball is the only sport I didn't play. You know, like short Jews usually aren't basketball players. It's not their gig. But I'm watching like this point guard for Duquesne, actually. Mm-hmm. The first game I went to was LaSalle Duquesne. All the Philly schools played at the Palestra back then. And the point guard for Duquesne was Norm Nixon, rather good player. Mm-hmm. Played years for the Lakers, great player. And like, wow, who's this guy? And the whole, this is 1976. And there's this whole basketball world in front of me. I get to watch these amazing games every night. There was a column in the New York Daily News that I bought every day that showed what the lines were. The guy made picks based on those lines. Now, you couldn't get a score on a game in 1976. So now, how do these people, these, so quote unquote, they're called wise guys, the guys who picked winners in basketball, how the fuck do they know who's going to win? You can't even get a score in a Wichita State, Missouri game if you're in Maine. Right. So how do they know who's going to win? So I'm totally intrigued by all this. Like and I think I developed a lot of instinct just by watching those games and being aware of what the point spread was. Because this had to happen somehow. I just didn't stumble into being some wizard at picking sports. I had to have some foundation.
What were you studying at the time?
I was a biological basis of behavior major who should not have been at school.
Okay.
I did graduate.
Yeah.
I learned how to write. I did learn that. I wanted to be a movie critic. The first course I signed up for was reviewing and criticism. Siskel and Ebert were like my heroes.
Yeah.
I met Roger Ebert too and told him about a movie that I thanked him for, and he went crazy. It was a great moment in life. But anyway, So in 1981, a book called The Handicapper by Robert Kalich came out. The first 2 pages of that book is this guy who has this like manic influx of phone calls, and he's getting all this information from all these people all over the country. And I'll be modern and say he puts it into his internal database, and he winged out the winners. And I said, I want to be that guy one day.
Sure.
So when I moved to Vegas in '89, that's sort of became that guy. I really have done well as a basketball handicapper, and I'm respected in the sports betting world community as a handicapper, maybe not as a human being, but as a handicapper.
Why do you say that? Why do you say not as a human being?
I'm brutally honest, and it offends a lot of people.
I always consider that very East Coast. That's how I refer to it. Like, I'm used to
I don't even know why people would lie. I don't even understand it.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes it's a little too direct or abrupt.
Yeah.
Or may come across as mean-spirited when in fact I'm just trying to help.
Yeah.
And
well, I think that,
and I have a difficult time dealing with stupidity, and maybe don't react to it too good sometimes.
having lived out here for 12 years now, I definitely notice a huge cultural change. And you know, I'm from Pittsburgh. It's not exactly East Coast, but it's Northeast. It's not a far cry.
A lot of people from Pittsburgh out here.
Yeah, and yeah, you know, the culture isn't all that different. A lot of Pittsburgh is born off of New York City immigrants anyway. And I just noticed that there's a huge cultural shift where out here everything's fluffy. You know, everything comes with a sweetener of sorts. So every bit of truth that you get comes with a nice little pillow that you can rest your head on and feel good about. And that's like not how I grew up. You know, we busted balls. You told people how it was.
That's right.
And I have a lot of respect and admiration for that level of transparency and people who can be that direct. But I also find it to be a bit of a net negative in my own personal traits, in the sense that there is some sort of, you know, demonstration of just being human or showing like some level of empathy by giving people the truth with a side of dessert, if you will.
Yeah.
I
struggle with that.
Yeah, me too.
Hence not being liked.
Right, me too. And I'm a very polarizing figure as well, and I understand that it's a byproduct of this. And you know, also it's a byproduct of always having a megaphone. You just have Twitter at your fingertips at any given time. If you just want to be truthful to 20,000 people who are watching, you just do it. You know what I mean? And the problem is whenever you start to treat your close inner circle the same way. And like for me, that's where I've found that I have the most struggle, because I'm just used to dropping truth bombs. It's like, oh, you fucked up. You just say that, right? It's like, it's okay. You're allowed to fuck up. We're all human. You fucked up.
That's right.
But like, you know, let's acknowledge it. You fucked up. And that's hard for people.
But you could say, how can I help?
Yeah.
You know, that,
Yeah.
That would be the second part to
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew my friend was being dicked around by this girl, and when he was out here, I said, you know, she's trying to have a kid with you, and you know, you have good genes, and she wants him, and she's older, and her time is whittling down. I said, she's no good. She's rotten to the core. Like, and he had a hard time hearing that.
Yeah,
And
that's hard.
Thankfully, eventually, they did break up.
Yeah.
And you know, I won't get into it, but certain things happened where, you know. Anyway. But I'm trying to help him by saying that. I'm not trying to be a mean-spirited prick. I'm saying this is not going to work out. You can't have a vase thrown at your head. You're way too chill. You're way too nice a kid. You're so pure. Like, there's no way any girl should ever do that to you.
I think it's a patience thing, right? Like when you grow up with a certain level of I guess like self-understanding, and you know, in your instance, like you're wildly intelligent, so like a lot of things around you just come naturally. It's easy to identify mistakes, right? And maybe this speaks to your sports handicapping as well. Like you can just identify a mistake pretty clearly. So like if you see something wrong, why mince words? But the human element doesn't like really allow for that very well.
The good news is I've gotten better, and you probably will too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I have that to look
Practice.
forward to the next 30 years.
Yeah. No, I have gotten better.
Yeah.
But I think that reputation's probably stopped me from having a job on ESPN, or
Sure.
There's no one out there that could analyze a game. You know, they have all these touts on all these shows, but they don't know fucking jack shit about sports betting.
Do you see that market growing and expanding now that sports betting is becoming this $1 billion above board industry?
I don't think it's going to. I'm in the minority. I think it'll be. I think it'll be like a flash in the pan. I think the novelty will wear off pretty quick.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it the other way.
Okay.
Only because.
Well, I also know that the people are far less willing to book bets, and unless Circa forces everyone's hand, and they're the only ones that could. I have mad respect for the guy who works there, and Matt Metcalf, and especially when he told me that he used to listen to me in a starters line and learned a lot from me. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, listen, if I can fly out here and help you, just tell me. I'll be out here on my dollar. I don't want a fucking dollar from you for anything. But you guys are the only hope to save sports betting.
What about rest
That's
of the
how
world?
bad it's gotten.
Are you speaking specifically to the United States market, or does this include like
It's
overseas?
pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
They take smaller bets. They throw you out if they think you know what you're doing, because they've lost the art of bookmaking. Like I described before, there's an art to bookmaking.
Sure.
Where you have a market. You have X number of dollars on one side. You have X number of dollars on one side. Who bet what on each side?
Yeah. Yep.
And you arrive at a number that'll be a good one to bet at. They're still laying you 11 or 10. That's a pretty massive edge.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Casinos probably would live on that edge.
Yeah, 100%.
Which, by the way, I hate the term fucking flipping, because what Jacks against Ace King is like 56-44. You could buy a fucking Ferrari in here if you got it in 56-44 the rest of your life, right? So who came up with that fucking term, flipping?
It's a big misunderstanding. People don't... Math is messy, man. It's too exact. It's too precise, right? Language and math do not collide very well at all.
Yeah, I've always had a hard time with that term. I never understood it. But
yeah. Well, that's because you live on fractional edges. Like
but
1 or 2%.
But I'm not a math guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but like 1 or 2% to you, is the difference between eating and not.
Yeah.
So it's like if
it's
you're
massive. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're 56-48 or
56-44,
44 rather.
That's insane.
That's huge. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You can't ask for more.
How can you do better?
Right.
Anyway, so I'm this guy who's having a complete breakdown at the age of 13, but finds peace of mind at the racetrack, comes to Vegas, finds he has talent for betting sports, and off I went. The reason I feel I'm an abject failure is I would have been a great high school English teacher, but they didn't make any money. And part two to that is I'm playing it totally safe here. I'm doing something I'm good at.
Yeah. Why is that playing it safe though?
Because I'm good at it. I'm a natural.
Isn't that what we should do? Like, shouldn't we invest our time and resource in
not if I could have helped a bunch of kids out by being a high school English teacher.
Sure.
What the fuck did I do? I made a shit ton of money and blew it.
Yeah.
Big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And I just completely copped out. However, from 82 to 89, when I did coke every night and got drunk every night and realized that had to stop, I now went to the gym and I became a fucking animal. I had a personal trainer for I don't know how many years and went 5 days a week, got the living crap beaten out of me. And the proudest moment of my life came in the gym, which I think I described to you, when having just done a 4-exercise superset on chest to open our show, I'm struggling to walk because I'm completely exhausted. We did 4 sets of 8 on 4 exercises with a minute's rest between. It was just completely insane.
Yeah.
Like this guy was like completely out of his fucking tree. Like I'm a human being. I'm not a fucking machine, you know?
Sure.
So now, that look where you're sitting between your head between your legs and you can't move. And he's there, well, we're going to do burpee exploding to pull up 4 sets of 8. And I looked at him. I picked my head up from beneath my legs. I said, you out of your fucking mind? And he says, you're just going to be a pussy your whole fucking life? Like, fuck you. I got up and I did it like it was nothing.
Yeah.
4 sets of 8, burpee exploding to pull, like it was nothing. I couldn't even stand.
Yeah.
And I realized that even though I thought I was giving my all,
Yeah.
not even close.
Yeah.
It's all mind over matter. I was just really tired.
Right.
But really tired doesn't mean you can't keep going.
Yeah. We've spoken
And unless
about
you
this a lot.
learn that by experiencing it, you don't know. Like I was so mad at him. Like I was giving it. I was trying my ass off.
Yeah.
I was dead, and I'd keep going.
Yeah.
But I had X number more and didn't know it. And our workouts after that got insane because now it's just all mind over. I knew it didn't matter how tired I was. I just keep going.
Yeah. Everybody needs to break under someone else's will at some point, right? That's the only way to shatter a ceiling.
So I went to a place where I'm not comfortable, the gym, and succeeded. That's what I think is success.
Yeah.
I was not an abject failure in a gym. I was a massive success there.
Sure.
In life, I'm good at I'm good at handicapping sports. I think I actually have more poker talent than sports betting talent, by the way. But I've never really applied myself to poker, and
There's
nor
a lot
will
less
I.
money.
What?
There's a lot less money. The ceiling's a lot lower.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough now anyway, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the novelty's worn off. A lot of the dead money has had enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a small market. It's unfortunate to say, but it's a small market. It's very difficult to grow. And that was kind of why I asked you, like, do you think that the media surge of kind of glamorizing sports betting will have an effect on the market? Because
I think it depends if the right people get hired to talk. Unfortunately, there's a minuscule amount of people who beat this. And most of those are guys who create algorithms.
Sure.
Or simulations or whatever they do. I this is really foreign to me, so I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
And how do you get on a TV show and talk about your fucking algorithm as to how you came up with the winner?
Right.
You're not going to be a very exciting guest.
Well, you might be, but you're not going to be all that.
But
willing
old
to
Boston
share.
here,
Yeah.
I'm just reading game stories and winging it.
Yeah.
I can talk.
Well, we could have like a fireside chat with Boston every week.
I would be very good at allowing the masses to understand why I like a game.
I would love to see that. You wearing like a tweed jacket, sitting with your leg crossed in front of a fire.
I won't be more Timothy Chalamet like an old wild dresser, but
Newspaper out, going through the box score.
nope, no box scores. I look at the box scores quickly to see if there are any anomalies in shooting, but
Yeah.
I'm strictly how did the games play out and what does this team typically play to, and let's not deviate much from that. And that's the struggle sometimes when when you're wrong about a team and they lose by 50 and then 30, you have to have the wherewithal to know I'm still right about this team.
Yeah. Right.
And stick with your guns.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets tricky. And I'm sure that's happened in
Oh,
poker. Where
100%.
you've all right, let me try this, and
Yeah.
you
run into it, and you live.
Right.
What were some of like the high water marks throughout all this? It doesn't even necessarily have to be sports betting. I know you kind of mentioned the gym thing. That was a huge success to you, but like
There was a
what were
moment on
some
a radio
massive
show
highlights?
that I'm very proud of, which I'd like to relate.
Sure.
So I did the Stardust line for years in the early 2000s, and I typically came on when college football was ending. Mm-hmm. But they happened to have me on for some bowl games, the first hour, and college basketball the second hour. And the host was John Kelly and Dave Koken, who's a local tout, nice guy, and I do think he tries. He's just not overly talented.
Sure.
So but I think he's kind of legit in that he tries to help his customers.
Yep.
And he listened, so he knew that he was with someone who knew what he was doing. So he didn't try to be some loudmouth, I'm going to take over the show, which he typically would do.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked him. So anyway, they get on to the Peach Bowl, and John Kelly says, "Oh, as a predecessor to this, my roommate's younger brother, I was helping him with poker. Kid went to San Diego, brilliant kid, really smart. Doesn't push himself, but he showed up at the Stardust line that night. We did the show out of the Stardust, where I was banned, by the way. It was kind of weird. I'm barred from the Stardust for telling the vice president he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the show. So this kid walks in, and I see him, and so now we get on to the Peach Bowl, where John Kelly says Georgia will be playing a stone's throw from their campus. And I said, and Jay, I'm saying this in your honor, Jay was the kid who walked in, I wonder if Shirley Jackson will be in attendance. And of course, no one has a fucking clue what I'm talking about, and I don't even know where I came up with it.
Yeah.
So to get this right, and I think we talked about this maybe, Shirley Jackson wrote these macabre stories, a lot of them for the New Yorker magazine, but she's a well-published short story writer of the macabre.
Okay.
Her most famous story is one that I read in high school as a junior. It's called The Lottery. It takes place in Vermont. Once a year, all the townsfolk throw their names in a hat, and they draw one name out, and that's the winner of the lottery.
I read this
But the
book
winner
too.
of the lottery gets stoned to death.
Yeah.
So stones throw from their campus. I wonder if Shirley Jackson will be in attendance.
Yeah. Right.
Jay's laughing his ass off. Jay got it. The rest of the fucking country, or the...
It's funny. I read that story in high school and would have had no idea.
Right, I don't even know where it came from.
Yeah.
But that's just it. There's your gut
Yeah.
speaking to you.
Yeah.
And it just came out of my mouth, and I was like, wow, that was cool. Like,
Yeah.
That was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
One kid on a forum, Jimmy Vaccaro, who's a famous bookmaker from out here, from Pittsburgh.
Sure.
He called me and says, someone's told you this is why Boston's the man on the radio. He has a mind like a steel trap, and he explained the Shirley Jackson reference, which no one in the fucking country understood. Like,
Yeah.
So that was one of my high water marks. Was that
That's awesome.
moment on radio. Another was again, what we were dealing with in the early 90s was nowhere to get information. Mm-hmm. A friend calls me up and he says, knowing I'm from the Boston area, he says, I just heard Harvard's best player got hurt. I said, really? I said, he's only like a borderline pro prospect, and they never get them there.
Yeah.
Like, this would be massive. So I call my friends, is there anything in the newspaper? No. Harvard basketball is not, until they hired Tommy Amaker and sold out and cheated recruiting and let kids in who probably aren't really deserving of a Harvard education.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's money. It's just money. There's nothing written about. But I remember WNBR in Cambridge. I used to listen to jazz on WNBR in Cambridge. That's the Harvard station. Mm-hmm. I called them up. I said, listen, I'm from Springfield, Mass., and I'm doing a little story for the local paper. There's a kid playing tonight at the game. Could I possibly listen to the preview? And the lady said, sure, call back in 15 minutes. I called back in 15 minutes. She says, 1 minute. She hooks me up. I'm into the Harvard broadcast. The first thing he says, bad news for Harvard fans. So-and-so slipped on ice and broke his leg this afternoon. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how the fuck did someone find this out? Like, I'm telling you, this is the dark ages.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a score. There's no internet to go read about, by the way, someone just tweeted this guy broke his leg.
Yeah, of course.
And I called my friend up. I said, well, good news. And, and I like Boston. They were playing Boston College, who's 5 minutes away. So there was an implied home advantage that didn't belong. It was during exam time, so there's no one at the fucking game anyway.
Right.
And this is just a really good spot for Boston College. Meanwhile, Mr. Walters had bet Harvard. So the game had gone from 11 down to like 8.
Yeah.
And now the game, I told my buddy, I said, you got the right information. And it was stealing. They were up 22-2 or something. They won by like 50.
Yeah.
It was completely stealing. But that little creative way to figure out how to find the information out was how you had to do it back then.
Yeah.
There was no solvers. There was go on the internet and read it. You got to figure everything out on your own. And I think that's kind of a lost art today. And if the math guys can infuse some of that, like you talked about, be these free-thinking, creative people with the foundation of this is the right way to do it, supposedly, that's the ultimate, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of technology advancing, is that our refined skills become more and more obsolete. Machines,
they don't have to, though.
No, well, hear me out. Machines become infinitely more efficient at anything iterative, right? So, when it comes to any sort of speculation on our behalf, they'll just be way more accurate. But what we have is the ability to think freely. We're not restricted to the algorithm that is programmed within us. So we always will have the creative force that can basically build a better machine, right? So each iteration of that machine as it goes forward is kind of programmed off the back of us thinking beyond the scope of where we were when we made the first one.
Right.
And I think that's what you're speaking to.
Right, that's what you do with poker, right? You try to take an opposite approach. That's why I called you an iconoclast.
Yeah, that's
one who
fair.
challenges social norms.
Yeah.
But that's right. Why do what everyone else does? You must find some other way to do it and then just make it better.
Yeah.
And make sure you beat the crap out of them. And
yeah,
my basketball handicapping is constantly evolved.
I think in any market, there's always going to be 3 tiers. There are going to be the pioneers, there are going to be the first adopters, and then there are going to be the losers who are, or the dumb money that's kind of like following the trail 2 steps behind.
Right, that makes sense.
And, if you want to be the absolute elite in any sort of industry, you have to be the pioneer. And with the pioneer comes a lot of fucking risk, right? Like, you just get it wrong some of the time. And you're going to be proven by other pioneers that you're wrong. And that's okay.
You have to learn from it. That's all.
You just have to live, learn, and adjust. The first movers, they're going to do well because they have first mover advantage, but they're never going to do as well as those inventing the original strategies. What you just never want to be is the fun money on the outside.
Which is what I was trying to say on 2+2.
Yeah.
Don't be copycats.
Yeah, exactly.
Be creative, be innovative, and wing it.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. The masses ultimately become the fun money that's just fueling the first movers and the pioneers.
And if I can go back on the abject failure thing, I've actually, after Jeffrey Marr and Rufus Peabody are talking about how smart I am, like, I never thought of myself as very smart, but obviously that's not true.
Sure.
I mean, I went to Penn. I'm not an idiot. That's just a fact. Boy, I'm come across as like a fucking condescending asshole. I was almost, at the beginning, I used a lot of psychology in my handicapping. I used a lot of energy theory.
Sure.
How much energy is this team going to have for this game? They're off the home run effort, and they figure to fall off a little bit. Or they're playing their 3rd game in 5 days, and they're a little short-handed. They may crack. Mm-hmm. There was always like a breaking point. That's not. I didn't want to get into that. That's getting a little too into it, and it's very, very personal.
But you're in the meta, basically.
But, I don't know what that is.
Well, you're basically.
I'm really old school.
Yeah, you're just quantifying the unquantifiable.
Okay,
right. There's no way to measure.
Fair enough.
In any capacity, but it's obviously worth something.
Right. So when I lost I think we lost like $500,000 betting these type of games, these psychology games, these energy games. And I finally did realize it. At least I realized it, albeit like a $500,000 later. But
Sure.
I only had half of it, so it was only $250,000 for me.
Yeah, sure.
Wouldn't I like to have $250,000 now? But at the time, it really wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
And I was very proud to throw out something that worked for 20 years, completely toss it out the window.
Yeah.
I still fight it, by the way.
Yeah.
Because logically, if you just played your best game, you figure to fall off the next game. But these kids are like fucking robots now.
Yeah.
And there's so much money on the line, and the coaches are making millions of dollars. They're not letting these kids off the hook.
Right.
Right? They're up 30. They're still all over the place. The starters are in half the time. I don't understand that logic at all. But
Yeah.
they're just preparing them for the NCAA tournament, where the school can make this whole shit ton of money.
Yep.
With that billion-dollar TV contract.
Mm-hmm.
So the game, I felt, changed because it went from the kids playing 3 sports to the kids playing 1 sport and they were much more athletic. The gym became more relevant to all golfers going to the gym now. Like, you'd whack golfers with a 4-iron as a kid, saying,
I would argue that the majority of D1 athletes and beyond probably spend as much, if not more, time in the gym than they do at practice.
Right, but that didn't happen back in my day.
Yeah, no. I remember how big of a deal it was when Jordan found weights.
Right.
Like I think it was like 93 or something like that. He hit the weight room for the first time ever.
Right.
Because he was tired of getting powered by the Knicks, trying to play in the paint. It's like, how was this only becoming a thing in the 90s? Gyms existed forever.
Right, but they were almost frowned upon.
Yeah.
They really were. It was kind of weird. Like people, some kids were actually like laughed at.
Yeah.
Now it's a problem where kids 13 years old are want to look good. They want abs. They want to get laid, and it's become too important to them. I read an article on it in England where it's actually a major battle now with parents and kids. Like the kids getting up at 4 a.m. and working out, and then coming home from school and working out, and maybe just working biceps and chest and maybe a little bit of abs and forgetting about legs and not doing it maybe optimally because he wants to look good. Sure. Because looking good is becoming more important.
Yeah.
Me, having never been good looking, wouldn't know what that's like, but it's gone actually the other way now, where the gym has maybe become too important.
Aesthetics are becoming like such a
but the gym was off limits to like basketball players and golfers and all.
I heard that growing up in baseball. It's like, oh, you want to be a baseball player, like you don't want to mess up your ability to throw. You don't want to get tight.
Right? But
it's silly. That's not how muscles work.
Right.
Yeah, and
it's completely irrelevant. And so again, I go back to the gym, which is the one real proud part of my existence. Is I went in a place where I had no comfort at all, and I won. Yeah. So that's how the whole failure thing and the whole that's what I feel. Yeah. I have felt pride in that I've been able to adapt to the more modern basketball game. They've shortened shot clocks. When I first started, good coach versus bad coach with a 45-second shot clock, the good coach had a huge advantage. He could control tempo. Athletes go nuts when they have to defend for 44 seconds against teams running really good offense.
Oh, we saw this with Dean Smith, right? Well,
he was an idiot. He had the best players, and he's going 4 corners. He's a moron. But he took advantage of the rules.
Yes,
which is why they had to change them. But so there was no shot clock back then.
Right.
Then they went to 45 seconds, which I'd love
Very
that.
Long. Yeah,
I'd love that.
Yeah,
that would make me. That would probably get me back to wealthy pretty quickly.
Pitt would become relevant again. They love playing 55-44 games.
Not with the new coach. Not with Cable. That'll change.
That's fair.
Yeah. But Duquesne's got the nuts. Duquesne's got Keith Dembro. He's the shit. He's the best. He's the best at the press conference. He's brutally honest. He's us.
Yeah.
He was LeBron James' coach, actually.
Yeah.
He was at Akron for years. He was fantastic. I mean, he gets the absolute max out of what he has. They didn't have a home advantage last year. They were all playing all over the place, Duquesne. It was kind of weird, but they're building some new facility because the program has been elevated, and now they can put money into it. Now the boosters are getting involved, and that and Dambro's there because his dad was there.
Right.
And he wants to make the program relevant again. He's really a cool guy. So Pitt should be proud of him for sure. He's the shit. How did I end up there? So the last couple of years where I've allowed the youth with their more modern approach, where I kind of eliminated their modern approach and just took what I needed, but I willingly taught them everything I know. Yeah. Which is stupid because one of the kids in particular wants to be involved in sports betting. And in fact, I recommended this kid to Circa for a job, which is going to hurt me big time. This kid knows how I do it. Yeah. He's going to make much better numbers than our current. And Circa, I think, is going to be the place to bet. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be blowing half points and points because this kid knows how I think.
Right.
And he knows it's right because he saw how much we won the last 2 years. It was crazy. Like, I had the 2 best years of my life the last 2 years at 61, 62 years old. 60 and 61, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And naturally, last year when we were about to kill the NCAA tournament,
COVID.
the shit show hit, yeah. At least didn't start. I had a really good week the week before, so thank God it didn't happen the week before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I went 6-0 that last Sunday, and they're all like really big bets. Like the last game of the year, if you're a few points off, it's like massive.
Sure.
Because by then, almost everybody should have arrived at the same ratings. Anyway, other highlights. Being, when I had money, I was a good egg. Like, everyone was taken care of.
Yeah.
Even there was a Wednesday night movie series at a community center on the other side of town. And I'd attend it, even though it was basketball season, because like I said, I'm a movie buff. I wanted to be a film critic. That's what I wanted to be, truly wanted to be, but I couldn't write. So ironically, I learned how to write. I write extremely well. I didn't learn much else at Penn, but there were a couple good classes that I still remember. And they were running these Super 8 reels, like old school, and it kept breaking. And finally, I told the guy, "How much fucking money do you need? We can't keep doing this."
Yeah.
And I just said, I just hand him $12,000. Here, take it.
Yeah.
And that was it. I just, my willingness to be generous. I grew up with nothing. I grew up in what they call the hood now. We called it limited income housing. I don't want my mother to hear that we grew up in the hood. She'll be pissed at me. But
yeah,
it was limited income housing.
Yep.
And we had a whole mixed bag of people. Like, this whole racism thing, I don't understand that either. I'm not going to go there because I'll end up offending somebody. But I don't get it. My mind doesn't even understand it. I can't. And so that statement is why I struggle to win in poker against bad players.
Yeah.
Because what they do doesn't enter my mind.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of where you're looking. Like,
I would need a lot more reps.
Yeah. And it's also just a matter of like what lens you're looking through. It's like, obviously racism exists at some capacity.
I don't understand it though.
Obviously. But it's born out of ignorance. And if you zoom out, it's born out of class warfare. Right? So like, you probably struggle more so than anybody else to understand it because you grew up in a mixed community, all impoverished.
We all got along.
And you're all impoverished. Right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like, this really boils down.
We had food on the table. I mean, it wasn't a disaster.
Sure.
We had no money.
But like, yeah, I get it too.
I was
It's
on the
like,
wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah, I grew up dirt poor as well. And it's like, you understand, like, whenever you have that thread in common.
We didn't do vacations.
Right.
Right.
You just look to survive together. You know what I mean? But like, once you get outside of that class and you find yourself in the middle upper, now all of a sudden it's a war of haves and have-nots. And that distills down to race, which is sad because it's like, can you imagine being on the side of being well off and then also disliking somebody because they represent a lower class of people financially?
It just doesn't register.
Right. We basically put a black face to the impoverished crowd, and that's a sad state of affairs.
I would rather say the Native Americans got way more fucked over than any other
For sure.
people.
For sure.
So why the fuck is no one mentioning that?
Yeah.
That is what's so fucking aggravating. We completely annihilated races. The Brits came over here and destroyed. Christopher Columbus is the biggest fucking scumbag that ever walked the face of this earth.
Yeah.
And we're praising this moron. Like, I mean, he just wiped out populations.
I think we're
So
finally
I'm not
circling around on that of understanding
Let's-
Columbus isn't the national hero we thought he was.
Thank God.
But
So we put a black face to it. But the Native Americans, man,
Yeah.
they were pure. They were amazing.
Yeah.
I play at Mohegan once in a while, and one of the dealers here is Native American, and I talk to him nonstop. We go and talk, and he invited me to a powwow, which of course COVID screwed that up.
Sure.
And I'm so fascinated by their traditions, but they do everything right. Like, we'd have an environment if we followed their rules.
Right.
And unfortunately, I watched a movie called The Nightingale the other day. This lady did a movie called Babadook, which was a horror movie that was absolutely amazing. Australian lady. But then she did The Nightingale, and it was raved about, so I watched it last week. And again, here we have the Brits going to Australia to settle it.
Yeah.
And they're wiping out the Aborigines.
Yeah.
So they did the same fucking thing in Australia as they did here. Like,
Yeah.
Same scumbags 40 years later.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if we look throughout the history of man, it's been divided.
But anyway,
culture.
I'm disappointed that Native Americans haven't been brought up about
Yeah.
someone whose lives matter. And by the way, I took a lot more shit for being Jewish than any black kid did in my neighborhood.
Sure.
Because a black kid would have beaten the crap out of him. And, you know, someone did call me a kike, and I did break his nose, and that was the last time that happened.
Yeah.
But I'd moved from the city to suburbia, so I was probably a little toughened up, and I wasn't going to take any shit from anybody anyway. I still don't. And that's led to me to getting hit rather hard by people 3 times my size. But, oh, well, I'm not going to back down. So there you go.
I guess arriving at current day, then what does the near future look like, and then like what does the long term look like
For me?
Yeah. Like near term, we don't really have sports. It's just starting to resurface. College,
Yeah, but
we're
there's not going to be any college sports this year.
Right.
There's no chance. That'd be so stupid.
Yeah.
Like how sick are these programs? Like they're hoping they were trying to get the kids sick in the summer so they wouldn't be sick for football. It's just complete sickness.
Yeah.
It really is. Money is just ruining the world.
Yeah, and like the major league sports are already proving that this is a failed experiment.
Well, you can't have managers decide if a guy's COVID positive whether he should play or not. Like,
right.
There's something called doctors out there, you know?
Yeah.
You're a baseball fucking manager. Like, bite your fucking tongue.
Right, and it's also like week 1 and the Marlins are off the schedule.
Right.
So it's like, okay.
I don't know why they didn't cancel baseball.
I'd be shocked if they.
But the NHL and the NBA, and the UFC for sure, are handling it properly.
They're also
as
small.
best you can.
Yeah, they're also very small. I think the NFL we're gonna see mass struggles there as well.
Yeah, I don't know how it's gonna work.
53-person team. It's just like, what shot do you have? Basketball, you have what, 12, 15?
I still don't think there'll be basketball. Yeah. I don't think there'll be college basketball.
No, I agree with you.
I'm praying there is.
I agree with you.
Believe me, I'm praying there is.
Sure.
I am at the peak of my career. I didn't make the most money I made last year because you have to have money to bet.
Sure.
But my work was, I always evaluate the work. Even if you lose a bet, you might have made a good bet.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You can play a poker hand really well and get sucked out on,
of course.
And so be it.
Yep.
And that's why good players have to learn how to lose, because they're going to get sucked down a lot more because they're going to have their money in good a lot more, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a good player, learn how to lose. In fact, you have to learn how to lose before you learn how to win. That's probably a good message to get out there.
I think it's really accurate.
Yeah. You know what's weird about me is I have all bad sports betting habits. I have all good poker habits. I don't steam.
Yeah.
I quit games if they suck. If I play a hand bad, I get up from the table. If I think I've played a hand maybe suboptimally to my abilities, to what I can think.
Yeah.
I'm not talking like I'm some fucking great poker player.
You do the opposite in sports though. You'll like fire if you're on tilt.
I bet too much on stuff that I know nothing about, just on a whim.
Yeah.
So I'm a degenerate.
Yeah.
I'm a degenerate gambler who became successful.
Okay.
That's what I am. I work 24/7. Don't get me wrong. No one outworks me in basketball. I work the entire day, the entire night, go to bed, wake up, and start working again. Mm-hmm. And the gym was the only thing that interrupted that, and that's gone away from me for the last few years too. I was out here in March to actually try to get my name out here, and then COVID hit, and I heard they were going to close the airports down, so I flew back to Connecticut. What got me back out here was I did not handle COVID well. I basically was alone in a home that I got from my Great Dane, who I had to put to sleep. And we had this trip planned with my mother this year. She's going to be 82 on September 1st. And that got canceled. And now, it's not, I'm alone here, and there's only so much Netflix you can occupy your time with.
Yeah.
I took tap dancing lessons. That stopped. I would have beat myself up as a kid for taking tap dancing. It's the most fucking fun I've had in my life. I absolutely love it. Yeah. I have no rhythm at all dancing, but tapping, you don't need it.
Sure.
But that stopped too, and I could have just practiced that. I could do push-ups, sit-ups, and everything, but I really fell into a real bad routine. Mm-hmm. And my mind, when you have a lot of time to yourself, your mind can take over. And I had 3 months of almost no sleep. I probably got 2 hours sleep a night. And even if I woke up after 2 hours, I wasn't falling back asleep.
Yep.
And I had to do something about it. And I know how to live healthy out here. Mm-hmm. So I called a friend. I said, do you mind if I come out and stay? And since he lived with me when he was homeless for a couple of years, he immediately said yes. And this has been a very successful trip. I've slept every night. I'm going to the gym every day. I'm eating a lot better. And I'm hoping that I'm leaving August 15th. I'm hoping by then I've developed enough of a foundation where I feel good enough about myself where I don't have a complete collapse when I go back to Connecticut.
Sure.
And start being a drug addict and living unhealthy again. Mm-hmm. It'll be a battle. It's going to be very
Is that something you consistently fight?
Well, understanding mortality at 13 can make life very, very difficult.
Sure.
What stopped that actually was I had gone 3 nights in a row without sleep, and if Mitch's bipolar illness did one thing, his doctor was he became Mitch's doctor as a favor to a friend of mine. A friend said, "Will you please help these guys out?" And he works at a reservation because you can't do anything on government state hospitals.
Yep.
So he can actually do proper work. This guy's in it for the right reasons. John Hopkins, med school grad, really smart guy. And he would come to my house and talk to Mitch and charge me $100. Like, they get like $500-600 an hour, these guys.
Yeah.
But he's driving to my house 45 minutes because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
So when I was having a breakdown out here, I called him up. And he met me at the Charleston Library. And he put me on, I told him, I said, my mind just runs away at night. It's to the point where I'm almost afraid to go to sleep. And I just go to places that are just too scary. When you venture into the unknown, it can get panic laden. I had panic attacks and a lot of sleepless nights, and I needed help. And he said, that's part of a depression. Really? I said, I've been depressed for 40 years. He said, probably.
Yeah.
And he put me on something called Remron. He said it's very specific for your, what he called ruminating. Ruminating is obsessing on painful thought. And while on Remron, I arrived at this very simple, logical conclusion. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to live this existence, whatever it is. I have two choices. I can live it happy or I can live it sad. Well, logically, you've got to live it happy.
Yeah.
So that simple bit of logic, and I'm a logical guy, anytime my brain started going, I would just stop, don't go there. And I've been able to do that. Unfortunately, living in a home by yourself, and now you're doing drugs, and now I'm doing some maybe heavy duty drugs, and really just falling apart. Like, the anxiety was just too much. I was still able to control my brain, thank God, because that would have been the end of me, but I still had panic attacks, and I was on the verge of, like, really collapsing in a heap, and my doctor wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to get into Obamacare ruining our healthcare system, but it did.
Sure.
Because the government doesn't belong in anything, which is why Jo Jorgensen's the automatic candidate to vote for this year. She's brilliant. Anyway, we won't get into libertarianism. So I came out here to save myself, basically. And I don't want to say knock a wood and sound cliched, but so far so good. And, it's just a matter of whether I can hang on when I get back there. I'm praying that there's tennis to bet or something where I could just delve into something and give it time. I can play in house games in Connecticut, but they rake $20, and it's probably still beatable. But when you're taking 20 out of pot, paying 2.5, they play 2.5, 10 actually. So the game, but no one buys in for enough. It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Have you considered, doing anything else like around your interest? Be it, I know you mentioned maybe doing a podcast, doing some sort of like long form media, be it writing or speaking.
I have 4 people I can interview that would be knockout home run interviews. That's what I have. If there was a basketball season and I knew it for sure, I have an unbelievable idea for a podcast where I would go over every game on the board, what the line opened, what it closed, why I liked the side, and why it won or why it lost. And I think anytime I've done my little Twitter reviews, they've been they've been responded to a lot. People seem to like the little blurbs about, a succinct.
It's really digestible.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I know it worked. I don't know how it worked, but that's it. It's readily digestible, right?
Yeah.
And it had relevant stuff mentioned in there.
Yeah.
I would say good things in a succinct way. And so I'm saying, I remember years ago someone asked me if I would go over the card on a Saturday, and it was a conference call. This is a long time ago. And it started off where he had X number of people on the conference call, and then he had to turn people down because he couldn't fill it up because it became that popular. I'd go over the whole Saturday card, which is nuts.
Yeah.
I had no right to be doing that. But like I said, I've always been pretty giving of myself, and I don't really care if I teach people how to do it because they still have to be able to do it.
Right.
So a podcast, I think, would be an absolute home run if there was a season. Because that simple, just going over the games, never mind everything else, and never mind that I can be rather quick-witted when I'm in a good place. And, I am polarizing, which is good for podcasts and radio. And I do know what I'm doing. I'm not knocking myself. I'm good. And I can speak to the masses. I can speak to the smarts, and I can speak to the masses. The blue-collar guy could understand why I like the game because I could explain it. I always wanted to be a teacher.
Right.
I taught these kids. They got it all. And I could do the same to the masses, and I don't care. It's fine. Here's what I know. do what you want with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my friend is handling the podcast thing, and he told me there's two ways of doing it. You can do the cheap way or the expensive way. But when he talked to the people who did the expensive way, they've called him back like 10 times because they do know me, and they do think that they don't have any sports betting guys. They handle the who's the guy in Atypical? Atypical is the best show on TV.
I know the show. I don't know
it's the best show. It's the best show in the world.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable TV. That's it. Atypical, everybody. There's going to be season 4, and that's it. But it's an unbelievable show on Netflix. Genius. The father in that show does a podcast on fantasy, and it's wildly successful. I forget his name. He's a New Yorker. But anyway, those people do his podcast. So they have been involved with a wildly successful podcast. And they heard I was interested in a podcast, and they won't stop calling this kid. But if there's no season, what am I going to do? Just babble for an hour about... I could.
You could lay the groundwork, man.
I know, but I don't know. I want it to be good.
Yeah, but you have a fascinating backstory. You have reach to people who also have great stories to tell. This is a great way to lay a foundation to set yourself up for when a season does come back.
Okay.
Honestly, like... I
you might enjoy listening to me, but I don't know how many people do. I'm kind of like...
You sell yourself short.
Out there.
Especially you have nothing to lose, right? If there's no season, you have nothing but time to kill.
But if I'm involving people who are super expensive and they're willing to... by the way, they said, we'll do this for nothing for him.
Yeah.
I want it to be good.
It will be good. You got to trust yourself a little bit with this stuff. I think that, like... you had enough confidence to come on here and know that this was going to be a good, riveting interview. And, like, I think it came out great. I'm speaking a little bit for the audience, but... I
would challenge that, but okay.
That's
me. Right,
you're very self-deprecating. Yeah.
Thank you.
But, like, the poker audience in particular, we don't get enough insight into the gambling world as a whole. And I think this is a good eye-opening experience.
I'm definitely a trendsetter. I mean, I'd readily admit that.
We barely scratched the surface. It's like, if you had the opportunity...
I could talk for hours about college basketball.
If you had the opportunity to spend 10 episodes really painting the picture of your entire life story and how you came to be...
Which is what you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, I don't have 10 hours, but like
right.
I certainly would be a fan. I would listen. I want to hear all the old school stories. I want to hear, like... running from casino to casino. I want to hear like some of the shit you got into. It's like, I know it wasn't friction free. I know someone who had something. There's a lot on the bone that I would strongly encourage you to, spend some time, flesh it out, and maybe have a project.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
I really appreciate this. This was
not a problem. Anytime.
I want to do it again. Maybe next time you make it out, assuming there is or is not a season. I don't know. Let's put it on the books.
Okay.
I think there's a lot more to talk about.
I'm
looking forward to your podcast that will be coming out soon. Everybody can look for it.
We hope. All right. Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking a chance on someone who I don't think the poker players really do know me. So.
It's possible that they don't, but
because they're too young. I'm from a different world.
Yeah, I think
I'm an anachronism.
I think that's somewhat fair, but I think you'll be pretty easy to find.
They knew me in the 10K stud though.
What is your Twitter handle for anybody who wants to look?
At Boston Red 88 maybe.
Yeah.
I don't even know, but I put mostly just music on there and some occasional boring rants.
Yeah.
No, I put tennis picks on there that have been winning.
Yeah.
And I give my little reasons. I put little blurbs on there. It's too personal to me, I think, to be some great follow.
Sure. I get it.
Yeah.
I find you to be informative, and I think that like anybody who's into the world of sports betting should definitely give you a follow. They'll probably see the same.
Yeah. And I will say the kid that I raised told me, Mr. Boston, why everyone likes being around you? I said, no, absolutely I don't. He said, they all learn from you.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, don't sell yourself
I'm trying
short.
to give myself credit, see?
I know it's
self-deprecating is trying to say, I'm not an idiot and I do have something to offer. So
yeah.
I just don't think I'm a great follow on Twitter because my taste in music is way, way different than most, and it's
sure
more the interesting than the current.
It's not top 40.
No.
It's fine. You're allowed.
I do have my Kid Robot shirt on. From the old days.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it for us.
Right.
Really appreciate this. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to have to do it again. Safe trip back, and let's fingers crossed for a season.
Yep, and keep being you.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.